Welcome to the next video in our Rebalance course. This video is going to cover a topic that most people are probably very unfamiliar with. So we're going to be talking about the tongue, specifically about tongue posture. Now, this is probably something that you've never heard of, and you're probably wondering what it has to do with anxiety or breathing or any of it. Trust me, we'll get there, and I'll let you know why this is actually a crucial piece to fixing dysfunctional breathing and relieving the physical symptoms of anxiety. So here's what we're going to cover in this video. We'll cover what tongue posture actually is, why it's important to us. We'll cover how to assess your own tongue posture and how to integrate this practice into daily life. Quick warning, this is the most important video in the entire course. Please watch the entire video. Don't skip, don't fast forward. Pro tip, if you want to save a little time, you can watch the video in 2x speed. All right, so what is tongue posture? So like I said before, tongue posture is where the tongue sits in the mouth at rest, and it actually has a significant impact on breathing patterns and anxiety. So we know that tongue posture is important, so what is good tongue posture? So good tongue posture is a specific position that you should be able to hold the whole day long. So the tongue should be resting gently against the roof of the mouth. The tip of the tongue should be just behind the teeth, but not touching the teeth, and the teeth should be slightly separated. There should be a light suction between the tongue and the roof of the mouth as well. Now, this shouldn't feel like the tongue is pressing against the roof of the mouth super hard. It should just feel like a constant light pressure. Now, on the other hand, let's talk about bad tongue posture. Bad tongue posture looks more like the tongue resting on the floor of the mouth, falling back into the throat, the tongue pushing against the teeth are clenching or grinding, or the tongue having really heavy pressure against the roof of the mouth to where it's uncomfortable and creating a lot of tension. And here in this picture, you can see the difference. So you can see that on the correct side, the tongue is kind of filling up the entire mouth. It's lying against the roof of the mouth with a gentle suction pressure, and it's just behind the teeth, not actually touching. Whereas with bad tongue posture, tongue is resting on the floor of the mouth, pressing against the teeth, and moving forward where we don't want it. So we know what it is, so why does it matter? Why is this important to us? Well, having our tongue in the correct posture is extremely important for a few reasons. First and most important being airway optimization. So having the tongue in the right place supports the upper airway, meaning it keeps the airway open and clear, which allows for smooth airflow. If you've ever heard someone snoring before, you know why smooth airflow is important. Weak tongue posture is a huge reason why people snore. And how it happens is the tongue is weak, not in the correct posture, so during sleep, the tongue actually falls back into the throat, cutting off airflow and making it less smooth. That's where we get snoring, and in more severe cases, sleep apnea, where we actually stop breathing during sleep. Now, tongue posture is also important for our purposes because it encourages functional breathing. Having that correct tongue posture, as you saw in the last slide, actually blocks off the mouth, so it encourages continuous nasal breathing. Now, this in itself leads to anxiety relief by helping our airways and breathing patterns and relieving stress on the body as a whole. But when the tongue is against the roof of the mouth, we also get additional vagus nerve stimulation, which we'll talk about more in a couple of lessons. But for now, it's just important to know that this helps us activate that parasympathetic nervous system more efficiently and consistently. Now, some of the consequences of poor tongue posture, like we talked about, restricted airways, and if this is consistent, it'll probably encourage mouth breathing over time, especially during sleep. And this will lead to low carbon dioxide tolerance and increased anxiety. And like we touched on, if poor tongue posture is contributing to airway problems during sleep, it's probably limiting how much sleep, especially how much quality sleep you're getting, which is a huge deal and obviously creates more stress, anxiety, all those negative effects that we want to avoid. Now, in this picture, you can see the effects that poor tongue posture has early in life, and it kind of mimics what we see in mouth breathers early in life too. So if we have poor tongue posture early in life, we're probably going to have poorly defined cheekbones, a narrower face, which leads to smaller airways, crooked nose, and just overall kind of that setback jaw in general. Whereas with good tongue posture, we tend to see more development of a wider face, wider airways, a more developed nose, and a well-developed jaw, all things that help us in the long run when looking at this kind of stuff. So if you haven't already, now we're going to try to find your correct tongue posture. So you should be able to maintain this position all day long. There's two methods that we can use that I tell people about most often. The first method, all you have to do is say the letter N. As you do this, you should notice where the tip of your tongue falls. It should be just behind the teeth, not actually touching, which is exactly where we want the tip of the tongue to be. And then you just need to bring the rest of the tongue up to meet the roof of the mouth. The second way to find your correct tongue posture is by creating that suction pressure between the roof of the mouth and the tongue. If you can make a popping sound with the tongue, then that's what you need, like this. Now, for the posture aspect of it, you just need to keep your tongue in that suction position without making the popping sound. You should be able to hold that position all day long, and it shouldn't be a super tight suction. It should just be very light and gentle, so very comfortable. But if this is new to you, this will probably feel pretty difficult. So it'll be important to start practicing and integrating this throughout the day. Now, there's a couple tools that we use to assess your tongue posture, the mobility that the tongue has, and its endurance. So the first one is just to see if you can get into that correct tongue posture. For some, this is hard enough, and this may be something you can't do right away. If you can get into this posture, the next assessment is to make the correct tongue posture, and while keeping that suction pressure, open your mouth as wide as you can, without that tongue coming off the roof of the mouth. Then see how many knuckles you can fit between your teeth, like this. The goal should be 2 to 3. If you can only get 1 or 0, then this is more of a mobility issue with the tongue, which we'll talk about more in just a second. The final test that I tell people about is the tongue pop test. To do this test, you'll have your mouth closed with your teeth slightly more separated than normal. You'll make that suction between your tongue and the roof of the mouth, and then you'll bring it off forcefully without opening your mouth, making a popping sound. So the normal popping sound with your mouth open would sound like this, but we want to do it with the mouth closed, so it's going to look more like this. So the test is to see how many you can do consecutively without fatiguing. The goal for this one is to get to 100, and if you get significantly less, like below 50, then you most likely have a tongue muscle endurance issue. Now, you may have all of these issues at once, or you could just have one or none at all. If you can do all of these and have no problem keeping good tongue posture throughout the day, you probably won't have to worry about this a lot. But it is important to check and recheck, especially if dealing with TMJ pain, neck tension, headaches, snoring, any of that stuff. So if you're having problems doing these tests, and especially if you're doing some of the exercises that I'll tell you about, and you're not noticing any progress, it might be time for you to be evaluated for a tongue tie. Now, this is something that you usually hear about with babies who are colicky or have trouble feeding a lot. A lot of the time, a tongue tie can be a big issue with this, but if it's not taken care of early on in life, it can have consequences later on. Now, if you do in fact have a tongue tie and need to get it released, consider getting checked by a functional dentist or a myofunctional therapy expert in person, another person to add to your optimal team. They will be able to evaluate you more thoroughly to see if this is something that might need further attention. If it is, you may need a tongue tie release, which essentially is clipping the frenulum between the floor of the mouth and the tongue so that the tongue can have the mobility it needs to move and function properly. So this can be extremely helpful for posture, breathing, anxiety, and tension, because tension in the tongue can actually affect the entire body. This is because of connective tissue connections that start in the tongue and lead all the way down to the foot, just a continuous band of tension. So if one thing is tight, all of these will be affected. So we'll talk about this more in our Rewire course, but this is a very important connection to be aware of. So here we can kind of see what a tongue tie looks like as we try to open our mouth with our tongue suction to the roof of the mouth. So if somebody has a tongue tie, it's going to look something like this. So the frenulum, or that little band of tissue here, is going to be very tight, very restricted, and it's not going to let you bring your tongue up as far as you should be able to. Here you can see it in a normal tongue. Somebody who's okay doesn't really have a tongue tie. It's not going to be restricting mobility much. And then as we get tighter and tighter, that mobility gets less and less because that frenulum isn't allowing for the proper mobility. So how can you integrate tongue posture into daily life? So the biggest thing I would say is to practice in a low stress environment right off the bat. You need to be practicing when you feel safe, otherwise this will be pretty difficult to integrate. Another big one that goes back to our previous lesson is reminders. So again, the body learns best when it is constantly reminded and reinforced to perform a certain behavior. So get out your phone again, go to that reminder that you made for nose breathing and add a blurb to it that says good tongue posture. That way, every half hour or so, you'll get a reminder to breathe through your nose and to put your tongue back where it needs to go in that good tongue posture. So this will make it easier to nose breathe in the future, and it'll be better for the nervous system overall. Also, be sure to get into the tongue posture exercises included with the program if you're struggling with mobility, endurance, or getting into that posture. These will help to build endurance and mobility, helping with posture over time. Now, if any of this is painful or extremely difficult, the last thing I want you to do is to get stressed about it. We can't always control things right away, and that's okay. Make sure you're not overdoing it, making yourself super sore or anything like that. And if you're noticing that things are really difficult or not improving, get yourself scheduled for an evaluation with a functional dentist or myofunctional therapist and get things figured out. Now, another way to improve tongue posture and endurance that I wanted to mention really quick is the myo nozzle from Rebalance. So this is a nozzle that you can put on a straw that is basically a workout for your tongue. So the way it works is your tongue has to work harder to get the water out of the straw. So it really helps with endurance and strength. So this is something that you can purchase. I'll include the link down below. And using this during the day can be a great way to improve your tongue posture and reduce snoring, even without really thinking about it too much. So great option for a lot of people. Make sure you check that out. Now let's review some action steps for this video. So start out with doing those mobility and endurance tests that we talked about. That'll give you a lot of good information about how you need to proceed and what you need to do to get your tongue posture where it should be. Get your daily reminders set, stack those with your nose breathing reminders to ensure you're pairing those together in your mind. Check out the Rebalance straw, see if that's something that would make sense for you. It's a great way to keep up with hydration and keep up with tongue posture strengthening throughout the day. And of course, start integrating those tongue exercises that I'll show you. This is the key to making progress with tongue posture and better functional breathing, so make sure you get into those. And just a quick summary real quick. We learned about tongue posture, what it is, why it's so critical for functional breathing. We learned how to assess your tongue posture, your mobility, and endurance, giving you a great place to start with this. And we have those action steps as well, so you have everything you need at this point to start making progress with your tongue posture. Probably something you had no idea you needed to work on, but I promise if you can stay consistent with this and make sure your tongue has the mobility it needs, then this will be a great tool for you on this journey. All right, so go ahead and get started, and I'll see you in the next lesson.